Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's Design Build Delivers podcast. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. Over the years, the use of owner advisors has grown as projects become more and more complex. Design Build Flexibility has also provided an increasing variety of options to successfully deliver projects, meaning the experience for a successful owner advisor is even wider than in traditional project delivery. With Design Build's expanded use, DBIA has committed to closing the knowledge gap for owners and owner advisors in a design build environment. Today, we talk to the chair of DBIA's Owner Advisor Committee, Molly Jones, with Jones Design Studio, about owner advisors and their vital role in delivering design build done right. But before we get started, DBIA offers our special thanks to USCAD for partnering with us to bring you this year's episodes of Design Build Delivers. Molly, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about owner advisors, which owners in general are such an important topic for design, for DBIA and design build. Let's just start with the big picture. We always say that design build is only as successful as the owners who implement it. Great tagline, but what does that really mean? I mean, why is DBIA so focused on making sure our owners are in the loop?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for having me today to talk about this incredibly important subject. But I think owners, it really all begins with owners, right? So if owners are kind of like dialed into what design build is, and specifically design build done right and the best practices, and they've created that culture of collaboration within their organization, they can really make or break a design build project. So their behavior, and part of what we help them understand, is that their behavior and their culture and their knowledge base is really what kind of tees up a design build project for success. So I would say that's why they're incredibly important, right? We can't do it without them.
And there are challenges, but for owners that have, because again, by definition, they might have a bigger bureaucracy they're dealing with. There's history, things that you're just used to doing, whether it's procurement and everything else. And so sometimes making that mental shift for owners has proven, making the mental shift can be tough in general, but certainly for owners, I think we found that sometimes that really not saying I'm just going to do design build, but I'm really going to make that mental shift has been a challenge, right?
Yeah, it has been. And I think there are some things that, kind of fall to individual people within an organization, but generally, what we find is that it can be difficult for owners just because of the way that they're structured, as you mentioned before. So if they're too compartmentalized, and if each compartment is really working on its own in isolation, and, sometimes puts them in a little bit more adversarial relationship, not only maybe among that organization, but also with design builders, with the folks who are offering their services and to them to be able to build or renovate the structures that they need modified. So that can really impact owners, just the structure of the organization alone. And we've seen owners that have been able to overcome that structure, right, and still kind of behave in a much more collaborative way and work together. And we call it the one team, one goal mentality, right? And that includes the owner advisor, and includes the design build team as well. But everyone on the owner's page specifically, like being involved in this project to make sure that the project is as successful as it possibly can be, is really key to helping make this mental shift. And it is difficult to get there for some people. And then invariably, there's times when we have a specific individual who just cannot get past the way things have been for their career, right? And sometimes that's for a long time, sometimes it's a short time, but they're really unable to make that transition to where they can actually work collaboratively with a design build team as we go through both the design and the construction process. So it can be difficult at the individual level, and it can be difficult at the organizational level. And that's where DBIA can come in and really help help everyone on the team understand the benefits of making that mental shift.
And we saw some years ago, as design build has continued to grow, so has the use of owner advisors, and design build owner advisors particularly have a certain set of skills they just need to have. So tell me a little about, the committee, our owner advisor committee has been engaged now again for years to try to help define what is an owner advisor in design build. Walk me through a little bit how that started, and why you think this has been such a critical move for DBIA to do.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, because I think it's been really critical for DBIA to define that, because it is different than it is a different path to work towards, especially when you're looking at prescriptive design build or progressive design build. It's a very different path, but it also encompasses a lot of other titles that we've seen around, like construction manager and things of that nature, owner's representative, those kinds of titles. And so it kind of is an umbrella term for all of those titles, but it is specific to the design build process, and specifically with the design build done right best practices, both for a fixed fee or a best value acquisition or a progressive acquisition. And so what we're seeing out there is that the owner advisor's role is really to come alongside the owner at the beginning of the project. And by beginning, we don't mean when schematic design, right? We mean at the inception of the project on the owner's, inside the owner's organization. And that owner advisor can be very helpful to help owners make an informed and educated decision about what project delivery method to make, all the way through to providing, a cornucopia of services, so to speak, both technical and then, and non-technical services, all the way through to post-construction. So they really are there to help protect the project, right? So that's their main goal, is to make sure that the project is as good as it can be. And really, when you're back in the very beginning and you're looking at project delivery method, it is incumbent upon owner advisors to make sure that the project delivery method that they are advising an owner to use is the best one for that project, right? And so it takes into account what's the owner's culture, what does the owner's team look like, how are they made, how are they made up, who's on that, what are their skill sets, what's their capacity, what's their experience with design build, can we provide additional training to help them make that mental shift or make the cultural shift that might be necessary for some owners. So all the way through to post-construction activities. So that's the role really goes, in my opinion, it goes broader than any of those other terms really address.
And I think that's so important, because when we say design build isn't a panacea, it doesn't work for every project, people seem surprised. We're like, wait a minute, you're DBIA, you always want design build. No, sometimes there are some owners that shouldn't be using design build or shouldn't be using design build on this project.
Right.
So who better than an owner advisor to help them walk through that? Or is this really even how we want to deliver this project?
Right. And I think people may come into this with an assumption that an owner advisor is always going to say design build is the right fit. And that's not the case, right? Because owner advisors really want to make sure that the project succeeds. And they understand that if design build isn't the right fit for that project, it is not actually going to help advocate for design build. Right. It is actually going to be detrimental to the owner and to the project and to everyone else involved in it. So they really want to make sure that they are finding the right project delivery method for that project. And it's not always design build.
And it gets back to that too, that idea of design build done wrong. That's why we created design build done right. It's, I'm going to do design build, and then you end up seeing all kinds of forms that kind of sort of look like design build, but really aren't design build, or are, an owner in, worst case scenario may choose to use design build because they just think they can pass the risk off to the design build team, which is design build done wrong as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about risk, that mitigation of risk and placing it where it is best able to be mitigated is really, one of the key tenets of design build done right. It's just making sure that everyone is allocated the appropriate risk for them, And no, it is not a wholesale transfer. It is a large scale transfer usually in design build done right, but it is certainly not a whole scale transfer. And risk assessments that are done and what comes out of that risk assessment is an indication of that, right? And how you plan to deal with those risks that may come up on that project. So, but definitely having that plan in place on how you deal with risk is also another key tenet of design build done right. So yeah, risk doesn't go away. Right.
It's a matter of who can handle it best.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Coming up with a primer for something like an owner advisor was no simple feat. Like you mentioned briefly, even just the terminology, right? Is it owner advisor? Is it owner consultant? What exactly, how do we put this in a framework that will be the most representative for the most teams delivering a variety of design build? Ultimately, I think we've landed in a place, and again, DBIA documents are often living documents. They are going to be adjusted based on how the industry changes, particularly design build changes. This primer, this owner advisor primer has really kind of provided a soup to nuts on how to get started, right?
Yeah, it really has. And it's been out for a few years now.
Yep.
And one of the things that the owner advisor committee is doing is taking another look at it, right? Because we're updating other primers and we want to make sure that this one is updated in lockstep with the other primers as well. So yeah, it definitely is a living document, and it is intended to be a high level kind of comprehensive view of what an owner advisor is, what they bring to a project, what services they can provide, and how you would interact with them. And then complementing that is the owner advisor training that DBIA has developed, and we launched at the 2021 convention last year in Denver. And that really is the complement to the primer, and really intended for helping owners and owner advisors, really understand how to implement these things and to kind of grapple with some of the big questions that come up along the way. So.
And that's such a great opportunity too in the education, because you get a chance to sit with like-minded folks who are looking for the same type of questions answered. And it's that type of group educational environment just really helps fuel progress, right?
Yeah, it really does. And what we're finding is that each time we get it, we deliver it, we have a diverse group of people that are in the room, right? And these ideas that come out are wonderful and exciting and fun to just kind of explore together. And we have several exercises in that course that kind of really start you thinking about, how might I apply, the DBIA is design build even the right project delivery method for certain different scenarios, right? And those really, like, that exercise is really interesting and causes a lot of interesting discussion, because it's not necessarily a one size fits all. So the scenarios are kind of varied, and in some aspects it may work and some aspects it may not. And so there may be some targeted training that's needed. And it's been a really interesting, really interactive training that we think has been pretty beneficial so far. So, and we'll be overhauling that after we overhaul the primer as well. So, excuse me, primer.
Primer, tomato. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's primer.
Are you interested in sustainable design and construction practices but concerned about profitability? USCAD, a N0 company, helps forward-thinking E&R top-ranked AEC firms mitigate risk and drive profit through digitalization using Autodesk AEC technology. To learn more, contact uscad.com/DBIA for a free 30-minute consultation. That's uscad.com/DBIA.
One question I had too is, as design build has grown, so has, I think, the skill set needed for owner advisors, right? I mean, maybe
Yes.
maybe the design build they did in 2000 is not the design build that's being delivered in 2022. What are some of the skills that you think are maybe most important that people look for if they're looking, do we need an owner advisor? What are we looking for, kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think they fall into two categories. So I think, the characteristics of an owner advisor, you really have leadership skills, you've got facilitative skills, and you have like best practice expertise and technical expertise. But when you're really looking at an owner advisor, it is the technical skills. It is also the soft skills, right? So it's the leadership and facilitative skills that really can help guide a team. And so if you're an owner looking to hire an owner advisor, you're going to do two things, right? You're going to say, what skills and capacity do I have on staff, and how do I supplement that with the services of an owner advisor? And by the way, an owner advisor can be an individual or a team of people, right? So how do I supplement what my staff capability and capacity is currently? And then how do I select the appropriate owner advisor that has these soft skills, right? That has the leadership and the facilitative skills to really help guide the project through the design and construction process, and even pre-design process and initiation process, in a way that keeps everyone on the same page, and in a way that hears every voice, and that is very highly collaborative by its nature. And those are soft skills, right, that you need to make sure you're looking for it in an owner advisor.
We mentioned conferences briefly. We always have owner-oriented content there, whether it's the owner's forum, owner advisor sessions. Give me a little idea of, if I'm an owner and I'm thinking about design build, or I'm thinking about hiring an owner advisor for the first time. Tell me a little bit of why the conference is a good place to get that kind of kickstart.
The learning sessions that are available at conference are really in-depth and very helpful, especially if you're a first-time owner and you're, like you said, just thinking about dipping your toe in the design build pool. You'll meet lots of people who are attendees at the conference who are right there with you, right, and are thinking about doing that. And you'll also meet a lot of other owners who have been doing it for a long time. And what we have found is that owners who have been, who've engaged in design build and have learned a lot, are more than willing to help those who are just starting out. And you can always find people, usually up on the panels or DBIA staff that can help make those connections and help you find those folks that can share their lessons learned, so that you get off on the right foot. And then, of course, there's just, the DBIA courses that exist out there, and those trainings that will also help you. So I think some of the most successful owners build the culture within their organization. They train their own people to become DBIA professionals, and then they train industry. So, and one of the best examples I've seen of this is Andy Carlson and what he's done at the Oklahoma Military Department, where he literally will say, I think we need a boot camp before this acquisition. And it usually happens with every major acquisition, and then sometimes every couple, if they're not quite as, large of an acquisition. But he definitely goes out there. He's a great example of an owner who's really trying to implement this correctly. And then there are many others. I can certainly connect anybody that's curious with owners that are doing this. But he's gone that extra step and said, hey, I want to not just educate my own team, but I also want to support the education of my service providers by providing those boot camps. And I'm a product of one of those boot camps. So that's where I got my training to get my DBIA professional myself years ago.
And we're seeing, we are absolutely seeing the increase, particularly in the one-on-one custom training that we do for owners, mirroring the growth that we're seeing in the use of design build. Owners are realizing that all over, federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies, they can get us in there for their group and really talk about specifically what it is they're doing with a project, which is really incredibly valuable.
It's incredibly valuable, right? Because we retain it better. If we're learning it for a specific project, we retain that knowledge better, and we are able to execute that project better because of all the conversations that we've had around the training that are specific to that project's execution. So I think that's a brilliant way to go about it, and a very deeply meaningful way for not just the owner, but the entire team that's involved in the project.
So I think the message may be, don't suffer through it, get help.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely reach out for help. Help exists. It's here. DBIA has a number of resources that can help owners when they're launching their first project or their 25th project. So, so definitely lean on the organization to help train your people and maybe your design build team as well.
I'm wondering too, as a designer, when we talk about making the mental shift in design build, you go back to our origins when design build, first started, there's a lot of concern about the relationship between an owner and designer being impacted negatively in a design build environment. As a designer and the chair of our owner advisor committee, my guess is you don't agree with that.
No, I don't. I've been on the design side of design build projects. That's where I started out. And, for me, it meant that what I'm designing is actually going to get built. Yeah. Right. So there's no handoff over a fence. There's, the cost estimator is just a phone call away from the person. In this day, at that time, we used to really, truly physically co-locate. So the person sitting next to me was the one making the phone call to the cost estimator to see if we could do something. So to me, there's some level of certainty that like that metamorphosis, and maybe not in a positive way, that can happen with other project delivery methods, really is happening as you're designing. It's not happening post-design. So I think that's been one of the really interesting things. And the other part that is interesting is that, we hear owners a lot of times say, I can't do design build because I'm not going to get the aesthetic that I want, right? If I don't dictate the aesthetic I want, I'm not going to get it. And as an architect, I understand that fear, right? But I also understand that we can, for vertical construction especially, we can describe it in a way that's performance-based. So we can say, hey, it needs to look like this, and the feeling you get in a space is this. And, in addition to all of the more tangible spatial descriptions and building descriptions and materiality of that building, we can definitely, describe the aesthetic characteristic that we're looking for, and we can get it. So I think that's been the other thing that's been really interesting to watch owners kind of move towards that and really begin to understand, yeah, I can get it if it's described properly in the performance-based specifications. I can get what I want. So, and that's been really interesting too.
And I'm wondering too, from, how do designers and your engineers, engage with a technical team to make sure that, the owner ultimately gets what he wants in that design.
Right. So part of this is related to the risk assessment conversation in some ways, because the owner advisor technical team, now every owner advisor is not necessarily a team, but when you've got architects and engineers that are writing the performance specifications, what's really important is that they understand that they're not taking the risk for like code compliance and that sort of thing. So once we get into post-award, and that owner advisor team becomes the team that's doing the substantiation of the design, they have to stay out of the weeds. So really, if they see something that's glaring, they can make an advisory comment, but it's really important that they're only looking at things to make sure that they align with the contract requirements, the RFP, the contract itself, the proposal, and for vertical construction, these things, plus the reconciliation list that we've come to an agreement on after the intended design builder is selected. That is super important. Designers and architects and engineers that can't stay out of those weeds, really on the owner advisor, it's really incumbent upon them to encourage them to stay out of those weeds, because that nothing can bog down a design build post-award process faster than designers and architects, engineers getting into the weeds and bogging down the entire substantiation process through that. the other piece of this is, and what we do on projects that we're involved in anyway, is we pre-fill out the substantiation log, right? Because who's better to do that than the people that wrote the performance criteria, right? So we pre-fill it out and we tell them, this is what we're going to, basically substantiate you on. And then we talk with them and agree with them on how we're going to do that and at what time and using what data and that sort of thing. So all of that's up for a conversation later, but we tell them this is what we're going to grade you on during substantiation post award. So, but it is an ongoing task, I'll just say, to continually remind the architects and engineers to stay out of those weeds and to only do the portion that they need to do. So
those little tricks of the trade and design build done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
In talking about design build done right, what do we do with bridging documents?
Mm-hmm. Hopefully the question is, do we do them or do we not do them? And hopefully the preference is to not do them. There is a time and a place for bridging documents. I will also say it is not a design build done right best practice to do bridging documents. And having been on the designer's side of that, I've not been on an owner advisor project where we've used bridging documents, thank goodness. But having been on the design side, when you see a design that's given to you, that's what you're going to get back. Flaws and everything. That's what you're getting back, because that's what that designer believes you want in your project. So what happens is that the owner assumes the risk of that design, right? So if that design has flaws or if there are errors in it and the design builder takes that and runs with it, which is likely what they're going to do, right? Then they have, they are not taking the risk of that design. That risk still stays with the owner. And that is a little tricky proposition. So I would prefer also as a designer, I'll just add this, is that I would prefer that you give me a blank piece of paper, right? Give me the criteria, give me a blank piece of paper, and let me actually do what I'm good at, which is designing and innovating and solving the problem in a way that maybe you hadn't thought about before, or maybe whoever developed your bridging documents didn't think about before. And let me, compete with others on that to see who comes up with the best design. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Allow people who have the expertise to provide their expertise to the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And oftentimes you'll come up with a better solution than what you had envisioned.
Well, thank you, Molly. I appreciate it. I think talking about owner advisors right now and what owners are facing in design build, particularly as we're seeing so much infrastructure money come through to the states and communities, is really valuable to help people get started on the right foot.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for, those that are just really starting out. I hear a number of owners say they'd never do a project without an owner advisor. And, of course, as an owner advisor and the chair of the owner advisor committee, I think that's an excellent idea. But I also, we also are starting to really see and capture data at DBIA's level about, we're projects that are awarded medals and merits of honor and that sort of thing. Was there an owner advisor connected with that project? And so really starting to gather that data and begin to analyze that data to really understand the impact the owner advisors have on a project. Owners are very busy doing a lot of things, right? And they have so much on their plates. And so being, kind of like the deep domain knowledge repository for all things design build best practice wise may not be something that they really have the capacity to do, but that's what owner advisors do. So I think it's been really interesting to see the uptake on using owner advisors over the last, many years. And it's interesting to watch this trajectory as it goes and to gather data about it and really understand the tangible impact that owner advisors have on projects.
And we'll give everybody a long list of resources they can use, but a good place to start is the website, which is dbia.org, and go to /owners. We have an entire section that is geared. It'll send you to all the various resources we've talked about today. So dbia.org/owners is simple and easy. Even listening to a podcast, you can make a mental note of that. And Molly, thank you so much, because I think this is really a great issue for us to be going into a new year pretty soon.
Yeah, very soon. Yeah. And we're in a new fiscal year for the federal government, but many organizations' fiscal years will begin January 1st, and that'll be, yeah, it'll be very interesting. So thank you for having me, Kim. I appreciate it.
DBIA has a wide variety of owner resources available online, including our Owner Advisor Primer. So please take a look at our full show notes, which are linked from our host page for all those details. But you can easily get started at dbia.org/owners. And again, thank you to USCAD for their support of Design Build Delivers. Find out more at uscad.com/DBIA.